Greetings, MelVee family, and welcome to this episode of MelVee Podcast on the Go. I'm your host, Melusi Ndhlalambi. Very excited to have you join us on this one. One quick thing I'm going to ask you. If you can, please just click that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe so that next time we post another video, you won't miss it. You'll get automatic notifications. So thank you so much. Having said that, let me welcome you to this episode of MelVee Podcast on the Go, where we talk about anything and with anyone. So give us the license to share what we have in our minds, and I hope it will be a blessing. I hope it will inspire you, and I hope it will help you as you live your life. Today I have a special guest with me, a lady I've known for many years, a mover, a shaker, someone I respect so much because of their thinking. Young, but they are not young in terms of their mind, and they've really done exceptionally well in many fields, and they've excelled. So today we changed tables. She normally sits on this side, but today I'm going to interview her. Jabu, greetings and welcome.
Thank you so much, Melusi, for having me. Thank you.
This is an exciting moment.
Yeah, it is.
You often sit here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, there's a change to everything. So for a change, I get to occupy the different seat.
Yes, yeah. Let's get a bit of your thinking and your work. But people may not know who Jabu is. Some may have followed you. Some may have been excited. They know exactly what to expect today. But some may not know you. So who's Jabu?
Jabu is a lot of things. But I suppose that's why I probably, hide much of it. People are free to discover what they can. But I mean, essentially, in all that, the many caps I have, I'm a simple African black woman who grew up in a township, South African township. So as typical and ordinary as possible, coming from a Christian family, 4th generation Adventist on both sides of the family.
Wow.
Church was in my face, even though I wished otherwise. It was in my face all my life. Grew up in the church, and I think also above everything else, though, a very passionate person. I think that perhaps is my defining, character maybe. I'm very passionate. So whatever it is I do, I am very linked to my passion. It's part of my ethos. And I think that defines quite a number of hats I wear as a person.
So let's go back in time. Growing up in that township, which township was this?
So it's called Matlosana. Back then when I grew up, it was called Joburton. It's based in the Northwest Province.
All right.
Yeah. And
And growing up in that family, let's go back to Jabu, the little girl. Tell us about your early memories growing up and what really defines those early years.
They were very special and good years, Melusi, because I'm one of the, I don't want to say few people, but I come from a family filled with a lot of love. I know there are young girls who perhaps don't have that privilege of being surrounded by love, many aunts, many uncles, grandparents. I was raised by grandparents.
Okay.
And the only reason my grandparents raised me was because my parents were young and married, and they were like, you go have fun and enjoy yourself. Just bring it to me, and I think, they did a great job. So I'm like Gogo's kid.
And Gogo would have taken you, is it because you were the only girl in the family or what?
Well, I was literally the first grandchild. So everybody was making a fuss about me, and it wasn't my parents tell me it wasn't like an easy exchange, but they were like, we're young, let's go have fun and just relax and focus on work and building your marriage. We'll raise her. And somehow they agreed. And so I was raised by grandparents, plenty of aunts, because my mom comes from a family with many girls, uncles, and of course my parents. I mean, it was an all hands on deck. I was that kind of a project, all hands on deck type of a kid. But so much love around me, so much affirmation of character, so much affirmation of beauty. I grew up very, very dark, much darker than I am now. I'm not sure why. It's changed.
The sunlight from the northwest.
It must be the adulting or growing, I don't know. But I was one of those dark-skinned, little girl who could have had an issue with self-esteem, but because of the home I was in, and how I was raised, I had all the confidence in the world because of how I was told and what beauty is, and how actually my complexion is the best, and it's okay, and there's nothing wrong with it. So my sense of affirmation, strength, or resilience is really nothing new, because I was raised like that. I was raised and constantly told of how capable I am as a person. So it's not like a new thing for me,
Wow. That's quite amazing. And kudos to Ukoko. I hope she's still alive.
Unfortunately not.
She rested.
Yeah, she's resting now.
Mom and dad?
Mom and dad are still, mom is still there, dad is also resting.
All right.
Both my grandparents are actually late, all my grandparents on both sides. But the impact they have left, I mean, I always say to some of my friends, I feel like they've done so much urgent work. So everything they did was so rapid over the years that it's like they knew that, well, you're not going to be around for much longer. So you need to know what you need to know. Pack your little suitcase of wisdom and anything else you may need to adult, because we may not be there. So I'm actually so grateful and cannot help but think of them in a very happy way all the time, because I think they've done more than they should have, because they've capacitated me very well.
Wow.
Of course, there's never a perfect recipe for life, but I think they've done the best they could.
And talk to that experience maybe for some young people who are watching there, because we're raising these kids, we label them different things, the X generation, some are 2000,
Gen Zs.
Yes, Gen Z, whatever. And they might not see the value of what the other generation before our parents could give us. So maybe give us a few things as a young girl. What do you recall from the wisdom, the knowledge that you gained from that other generation? Because with you and your parents and the grandparents, you're talking about 3 generations living in the same place. What are some of those things that they imparted to you as a young girl that you still recall?
I love that question.
Besides the spanking, I'm sure there must have been some.
No, absolutely. I mean, what I forget to always mention is that they were all disciplinarians.
Yes.
And I think that rubbed off on me. I may be young, but, I have that character in me. I'm a disciplinarian. It's just a very boring part of me, but I take it from somewhere. So, but I think, the reason I love that question is because we do take it for granted, or rather the younger generation does take it for granted. The privilege of being raised by 2 different generations, maybe even 3. Some people are even more blessed than I am. I mean, there are people who still have their great-grandmothers even today. Some of my friends still do. I always tell them how blessed they still are. But one of the things I could say, I call them legacies, and I think how I was raised helped me redefine what legacy is. Legacy is not a trust fund money.
All right.
I mean, that's always great, but
it can come in handy.
It's always handy. But I mean, with growing up in a typical black community, a typical black family in a township, some of us, when it comes to legacy, we refer to different things. We refer to a work ethos, we refer to reputation, we refer to a sense of character, which is linked to your lineage, who you are, how your grandfather used to treat and behave, how people used to regard your grandparents or your parents. And sometimes people give you this regard not because you are you. It's because they honor people who came before you. I used to know her dad, or I used to know her grandparents. They were so awesome. And by virtue of that, you get this honor from people you don't know, who are not even your age, not because you like such a great person, but because it's the blessing of people who aren't even around anymore. And we take that for granted because of the path that has been cleared for us before by people who loved us enough to kind of try their best to live right and do right by other people too. And you kind of walk in that blessing of, this is so-and-so's granddaughter, this is so-and-so's daughter. But of course, you don't just leave it there and bask in the pleasure of that. I believe you've got to also build your own sense of being and character. But I think also one of the things I appreciated about being able to be raised by all these generations was the balance of the stillness, or I suppose the dynamism of that comes with a young married couple, which my parents were, traditional SDA, but also having to balance the disciplinarian nature of my grandparents, but extremely loving, because somehow grandparents with grandkids are a little bit more lenient. But all of that was beautiful because it groomed a whole person in me, a person who is, I think, considerate, open to others, and also very deeply rooted to service, because I do come from a family like that, where serving in church is like I think if you don't do that, you're probably not known to that family, because on both sides of my family, people have always served in the church from like ages and ages ago. So you being a youth leader or a pastor or an elder, it's almost like, but of course you're supposed to be doing this. And I think it was a nice influence to be raised in that, even though sometimes it had its challenges when you want to break off. But it was a good thing.
When you discover yourself, when you see something new, exciting, it becomes like a moral compass. But talk to us a little bit more about those instilled values. One of them, I think I've heard you mention it more than once, is the faith of the family. How has that rubbed on to you as well as you discovered yourself? I'm still looking at the young Jabu growing up in that space.
I mean, sure, I was very active in church. Look, I have an interesting story where, in Klerksdorp, which it's in Klerksdorp. The Seventh Adventist Church is directly opposite my grandmother's house. My grandmother's house was a corner house in front of the church.
Wow.
But the church mission house was like 2 streets away, further down. So technically, by default, I would suppose, our home was like a church house.
An extension of the church.
Yes, because it was the closest. The church had its mission house, but our house just became. So hence, I'm saying church was in my face all my life, even when I did not feel like it was right there in front of me.
You couldn't be naughty come Sabbath morning.
I could not even.
Where else would you go besides just crossing the street?
There's like one gate. It's facing the gate of the church. I mean, that's the kind of pressure I think I come from. And we'd have... So I grew up seeing pastors being welcomed while they are waiting to be taken to the mission house. Guess where the waiting is happening? In our house. They need to eat. They need to be fed. They need to be welcomed. My grandmother kept the keys to the church because it was the closest. Youth choir practices, Pathfinder practice. Our yard was like church. So I come from something like that. And I think that's why, besides it being in your face, I think I'm happy because I took it in good faith as well. Not even if I had it my way, if my grandmother could help it anyway. We see things like, this is my house, and from Friday evening, this is what happens. And there's only one boss here. So I come from that type of upbringing where, you're told this is my territory.
House.
And
you
we
do what
this.
I do here.
Sabbath morning, you wake up, you go to church. I come from that type of. So it was, I wouldn't say it was forced, but it was just a way of life, and it was okay. And I'm grateful for it, because I know for a fact that if it was not like that, I certainly, without a doubt, would have turned into something different.
The other dynamic you had in your family was your brothers. You were not born as the only sibling. Talk to us about being a sister to these two brothers, right? 2 brothers,
Yes. We actually have 3 siblings. We have an older sister as well.
Okay.
So I have 2 interesting dynamics, because I was born and raised as a firstborn, to my mom, and have always been this deputy parent all my life to these boys who are men today. But we have an older sister as well. So an interesting, loving relationship, because the minute we bring her into context, I'm the relaxed second-born who just throws everything to her to deal with, because it's like, you're the first, and as much as we didn't grow up with her, we've always known her. The relationship has always been very strong, very loving, very warm, and just always very beautiful. And I think it's one of the things that have shaped me into responsibility, being able to grow up as a firstborn, being raised as one, and practically having your brothers look up to you, and maybe even abuse it a little bit sometimes, because it's like, she'll sort this out, or like the little savior that you become when you're the big sister. But also an interesting life to grow up with men, I guess, who have grown up to be.
How have they impacted your life today? Or how are they impacting your life today?
Well, besides giving me some stress here and there, they have taught me a lot. So whatever I'm seeing from them, I'm not starting to learn from them. I've started learning it from my grandfather and my father. And my uncles. So father figures, or male figures in my life, have been quite plenty. I've got uncles who are my dad's brothers, my grandfather, who is the most significant figure actually in my life, because he raised me. And my dad, of course, who has had a huge impact, especially in my career. And also the young men who have helped me they have given me space, which I see as a privilege to help mend the men, help mend a modern African man, men who are Christians, and people would say black men who people would love to, say stuff about. Sometimes black men are a problem for no reason, for just being black men, and there's all these hashtags, and it's life is not as easy for black men, right? Without getting into details of that, we see social media, and sometimes black men are, it's not an easy life, and they've given me an opportunity to help contribute to a better black man for society, a better black man for the church, a better black man for families, just as a sister. Because as from a sibling point of view, at that level, we're equal as siblings, and we're able to engage or fight or be upset with each other. But eventually, as siblings, we'll hear each other out. I mean, it's not like you can deny me. You're stuck with me forever. So you need to hear me out at some point. And even if you need a breather, you still need to come back. We need to sort it out and move on. I mean, it's one of the pleasures of family. And I think they've allowed me that opportunity, because I couldn't, exactly go out there and mentor men or young boys before I help my own brothers and help contribute to them becoming good and better human beings as men to their friends or wives, or just in society, because I'm also a very big fan of building good societies.
Absolutely. And I really quite impressed. I know one of your brothers is quite close to me, Ndhlalambi, and he's become a pastor, and a leader actually in that sector. And when I look at you, there's no way I cannot remember him, and when I look at him, there's no way I cannot remember you. But you mentioned your dad's influence on your career, so talk to us about your journey through education. Which subjects were the most difficult for you?
I was not a smart. I think I was not a smart.
You're not an A prize girl.
I was never that, and I've never been. Ashamed to say. I wasn't practically failing, but I just was not a numbers person. I was a words person.
All right.
I've always been a words person. So me being a writer.
Tell us about that.
I would do well in history and English because I blame my dad. It was all he's doing.
What did he do?
My dad is not just him, but also my late uncle.
Okay.
They had similar characters in a sense that they were avid readers, thinkers and speakers. My other uncle, who's still alive now, is very shy and kind of laid back, But these other two, in fact, including the other one who's still alive, also very much an intellectual from back in the days. And I think we take this, I would say perhaps a gift of the passion for knowledge from them, because anyway, we didn't have a choice. My dad would tell you to wake up on Sunday morning to go and buy Sunday Times newspaper, and you think, oh great, no problem, because he's going to come and read it. Meanwhile, he'll ask you, please read this article for me.
Oh wow.
And you're like, but why can't you read this yourself? It's like, read it, and when you finish reading it, he'll be like, okay great, so what's your opinion? I'm like, I don't have an opinion, because I don't even care about what they've written here. But he will force it out of me to say, this was a journalist's words or perception. You've read it. What is your perception? Wow. And I think he did this since I was literally just like a child. And I was like, but why am I being tortured like this? Because I don't need to have an opinion about articles in the newspaper.
About what?
And I think he was just, when I grew up, became a teenager and started having interest in journalism, I understood why, because he essentially taught me to speak, to say you have a voice and it matters. Wow. So what you think matters. I need to know what your opinion is. So I'm your first audience. Tell me what you think about the news. Tell me what you think about what we're watching.
Wow.
And I think that's when the little talker in me started, because I had the confidence in the house to speak my mind.
All right.
My first engagement of debating about current affairs was with my dad and with my brothers and my mom, in the family. So when I got outside, I could only be what I was used to because I had the confidence to engage, because that's how my dad was with us. I think he did it with all of us. We are all like that. Our youngest brother is, of course, very shy, and he's not like us. He's more quiet and hides a lot, but he's got the same character as well.
So true education for you happened in the home? In
the home. By the time I started to study journalism, I was not confused. The only reason I I did something different before. Just a little side note. I mean, I studied mechanical engineering.
Mechanical?
You'd probably laugh.
I'm actually shocked.
Yeah, it's crazy because I literally just did like an entry level 1 year of that thing. And I did very well in engineering, drawing and maths. Strange because I happened to listen to my uncle-in-law who was a mining engineer and who said to me, you know, you can make so much money. There's hardly black mining engineers. There's so few black female.
All right.
Purely based on his narrative with money, there I went and just registered for this thing. And I was so tortured. I had to sit him down and say, with all the love, I know it comes from your heart, but this is not me. Carrying a T-square big ruler in my... It's not me, but I've tried. I've passed. I guess there's potential, but it's not me. I'm a words person. I would like to do something that has to do with stories, community, and impact. I am a journalist. I'm a storyteller.
Wow.
So I think I'll just focus on that.
Wow. And so you moved from that, and where did you go? What training did you get? And
I studied journalism.
Full time?
I studied journalism, and I worked for the Sunday Times newspaper. I did my internship at the Sunday Times. I also spent some time in the Financial Mail and Business Day newspaper.
All right.
When I did my internship in journalism back then, it was called Times Media. No, Avusa Media. Avusa Media, which then changed to Times Media. I think right now it's Black Star or something. Tiso Black Star.
All right.
And even when I got there, when I was an intern, I mean, it still wasn't enough because I knew that I wasn't just an ordinary journalist. I trained as a financial journalist. So then I did not want to be a tabloids person. I did business. I would report. I was a business reporter, so I'd report on the markets and business news because my interest was business and Africa, but mainly African business. I didn't like breaking stories of riots and protests. I mean, I'd never had an interest in that, but I needed the news of
running
leaders.
After those stories.
I did a few, but I wanted to sit leaders down and hear what they have to say about certain things and you know, talk about what makes companies move, shake, break and rise and that sort of thing. And even then, I still didn't last because I knew there was a leader in me. So I jumped into corporate, and the rest is history, I guess.
So talk to us about that now, because I have noted even on your profile, you've got a very strong media presence. You are a speaker. I've seen you travel across the world. But you also say you jumped into something that was already in you, leadership. Where did that come from? And how do you perceive that you are such a person who's a leader? And you know, we have always a common cliche in South Africa. Everyone who sees you, my leader.
Even though very problematic greeting, but anyway.
Yes, very patronizing.
I mean, I'm grateful to how I was raised, but mainly my uncle this time around, my dad's older brother who's late now.
All right.
I used to call him Mandla Buthelezi. He was a leader, not just in business, but also in our family, in society, in church. And it was truly a leader by nature. First of all, with his stature, but also just with his thinking and his passion to mend, to build and mentor. I think I have literally grown my entire life seeing and watching that man mentor young couples, help people build their marriages and help leaders capacitate themselves. I mean, he had a career as a facilitator as well in business. So, and I think all our siblings have that sense of being able to build and teach and capacitate other leaders so they can be able to serve. But I think it's not something I'm gifted with. I guess it was just luck or a blessing that I was able to learn those traits from him. Maybe it's inborn, I don't know. But I did well in corporate as well as a young leader. I've had an incredible career in corporate. And I think this is why I have had a few defining moments as a mentor as well, because it's a notion I come from. I can never think differently than to mentor and to capacitate others, because it's part of building. If you don't think that way, it's never about you. Like it's no matter how great you are, it's truly never about you. It's always about
others
and the legacy as well. So I think it's very important to live life understanding that You may be the most perfect and awesome person, but it's really never about you. You should be able to train or help someone do what you do either better than you can, or help them do what they want to do better than the best way they can. Because we've got to be able to capacitate each other into greatness, so we can be able to move our societies further.
You know, you are saying a powerful, let me call it a philosophy right there for leadership. And I want you to unpack it a little bit, because I believe our time is suffering a leadership crisis. Not because we don't have leaders, but we have not espoused the principles and the ethos, the pathos and the ethics of this philosophy you're mentioning, that it's never about you. Here's why I want you to dig a little bit more. When you look into nature, when a river flows, it doesn't flow for itself. It flows to sustain life wherever it goes. And communities in Africa built along the rivers because that's where life is. So that river doesn't flow for itself. When a mango tree gives us mangoes, it never eats its own mangoes. It continues to give out of what it is created to be. So a mango tree doesn't eat its own mangoes. All right. The sun doesn't shine for itself. It's always to create ecosystems and life wherever it goes. So that's what I hear when I hear you speak about your uncle who gave himself to help others, and you espoused that as your leadership philosophy. But tell us about, how then do you take care of this leader? Where do they feed from so that they can feed others? Because you can't give out of nothing. So how do you feed yourself to be in that position where you're giving to others and you're developing others?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. I mean, you know, one of the topics or elements I'm passionate about besides young people in the continent is leadership. I've always been interested in that. I saw
it recently. You're running those millennium dialogues for young people.
And so that's because that's how natural it comes to me, that I could start anything, build anything, move anything, so that we can just capacitate emerging leaders. Besides that cap of the philanthropist Jabu, I do it formally. I am a mentor for emerging African leaders. I do it as a professional. I do it through various institutions in corporate or the church, or just with other social institutions and other bodies. So it's a greater part of my job, because I think my career and my being is, part of it is rooted in that, because I truly do believe in it. Because I also come from it and it made me. I was capacitated by leaders. I was mentored by CEOs, and my hand was held by also professionals in various industries. I did not make myself. I'm a product of a lot of great leaders who took their time to build what I've become. And it's very important to be able to take care of leaders. And I think my mentor taught me this. One of the mentors I always look up to and always refer to is the former CEO of Telkom, who was my mentor for over 8 years. And I think he shaped my the professional Jabu more than many other mentors I came across, like Thabo Mwabi, who, when I met him at MultiChoice, and plenty others that I came across. Because through our walk and journey together, I was able to realize that you cannot, as you say, give what you do not have, neither what you don't even know, right? And you've got to be able to be in a position where you say no. People don't like that a lot sometimes, because people are also so entitled to the achievements of leaders. People are so entitled to the achievements of others. And I don't blame those people too, because remember, we are a Black community and we come from togetherness. We grew up, I mean, we're in my grandmother's house. There were plenty of us. I wasn't the only. I had other cousins. I had my mom's sister. It was a big family. There was always sharing. It's never ever about you. Even if you have something favorite that you like in the kitchen, one day you'll get there. It's not that somebody ate it. That's just how it is. Because there's many people here, you know. It's not just your own space by yourself.
That's an interesting thing you're mentioning right there, and I can identify with it.
I mean, we come from I think
And you had to
black
be present when the meal is being shared. Otherwise, you get the scraps.
If you cannot negotiate your own size of meat or whatever, tough luck. It will be there, but
eat the soup.
So I come from that. Supper times, like 7-8 dishes put across, and everybody has that kind of job. Who takes out the dishes? Who dishes out? Who cooks? Who cleans them? These are not just chores. These are elements that have crafted who we are. These are elements that have taught us how to share and why sharing never needs to be explained. Sharing is the right thing to do, because a community shares, a family shares, because it is a good thing. It's a thing of goodwill. And this builds up to us as professionals in corporate and as people or members and friends in churches and everywhere else, how we need to learn to coexist together, because we by nature come from coexistence as families and as black families, mainly because we also had no choice. We were squashed because of apartheid in South Africa, so we had no choice.
You had to be one.
Yeah, we had very minimal space because of the spatial, segregation
of the policy.
So even if we had it any other way, we had to deal with the cards that were played at that time. But in a good way, I say, that has built us to have the sense of togetherness that should be a catalyst that helps us build our futures as black people. I can never understand why we can never build anything and have a sense of resilience, because we have learned to be together. And for anything you need to build, unity is key. But we fail dismally with that, because for some reason, modern life has taught us that, it's a one-man show. And this is why we can't build any lasting establishments, because we work in silos, because we never want to work in a community, so we can build legacies that are significant for other generations. I have a problem with that, and I'm always very vocal about that. So I think we need a lot of unlearning to do as African people.
We grow up in communities, like you're saying, large. That's generally across most of Southern Africa. I can identify with that. You grow up in your household, but all of these people around you are relatives and they have a say in your life. But as you grow up, you actually extricate yourself from those same people. And I also see the same dynamic coming in. An individual man can build his house, finish it by themselves, finish it. Okay? But you bring the same man with 20 others at church, they'll take 20 years to finish that building. Why is that? Why is it that when we come together, we can't bring the capacity I have as an individual to the greater good? So that becomes a bit of a challenge. So let's talk a little bit about, so you have espoused that philosophy for leadership. How have you applied it in your own personal life? And I'm quite interested, actually, because I've seen you doing quite a lot of work with young people. So talk to us a little bit about that. Why go for the young people and not your own generation? And also, quite interestingly, in the church as well. I've seen you in the world. Well, I shouldn't use that language, because someone told me the world is actually the church. There's no difference. The barriers we put are not supposed to be
outside,
there.
inside.
So let's just say youth in general.
I'm very passionate about it. Not because my age mates are boring, but I don't think there's anything I can teach. I mean,
No, I saw a clip actually about the girls born in the 80s. One of the ladies was like, I'm a place I can't turn the food.
We kind of almost like the aunties right now anyway. So, I don't think there's much I can share with them, except to just sit and probably share my stress with you, so we can help each other discover how to navigate, with these youngsters and the problems sometimes that they bring us. But I love young people because of how I was raised, when people picked me, not because I had the cutest smile, but because I showed potential, I showed interest. But I was shy, and this is what people don't get it. My career is the stage, but job is not the stage. And I know it's a contradiction, but that's the best way I can put it, I am not a public person. My job is public. But not me, right?
Now, that's very deep, because many people can identify with being shy. Sorry to jump in there, but I want you to explain that a little bit more, because many people fail to actualize themselves because they're being forced to break through this person that they are into another life, and they cannot stand it. Well, how did you overcome that?
So I think a value system is key. right?
Okay.
That's a very critical question as well, because so you've asked me how I've been able to balance my my interest with young people and the leadership ethos.
philosophy. Yeah.
Because I, first of all, very early in my life, and I'm grateful for this, understood that God is the excellence that I take to my work as a professional, as a media professional, is the same excellence I need to take for God.
Wow.
In church. So just because it's Sabbath, it doesn't mean I need to come and be mediocre, even when I'm told, please set up the mics or please do Sabbath school. I was presenting with excellence during the week. The same excellence, if not more, should apply even on Sabbath for God's things. And I've always had an issue with people who mute the excellence when it comes to God's work.
And just do things anyhow.
Just because it's church. You just give this mediocre, substandard offering, giving or contribution because it's a church thing. That is a very big problem. I think it's a very big problem. That should never happen, because the very career you have, I believe, our giftings come from God. That's why we're able to establish ourselves as professionals outside the boundaries of church.
In fact, I think if you read the book of Malachi, God has got about 4 or 5 questions he has for leaders, priests. One of them is, where is my honor? If I am God, how are you honoring me?
And I think my family has always taught me that, mainly my grandmother with this one. How you are gifted is a gift from God. So she was never a fan of talents, because she's like, people can do anything with talents. Talents are yours. Even you can boast and say, okay, I don't want to because it's mine, you know. But she says, try to forget talents. Maybe look at it from a point of view of gifts. So it's a spiritual gift. You are gifted in this way. So God has capacitated you in this way. So technically it's not yours. It's his. So essentially you've got to honor him with it. And in this way, then he can move it. He himself can do the moving of it, the growth of it. Even on seasons where he puts you on a bench, doesn't mean you're not capacitated that way anymore. It just means you're on the bench.
The seasons are different.
It's time for somebody else. It's got nothing to do with, it's no longer, it's just perhaps now you are not the chosen player, but you are as gifted, if not more. Because he gifts, he gives the gifts. So I'm a huge fan of that, and I always try to teach young people that this is why I always say, if I can influence the younger generation, at least before they get to 25, because that's where I choose those ages, because between 18 and 25, I was on a journey of discovering who I am. I had struggles. As much as I had a strong family support system, I mean, I was still an ordinary young person growing up in South Africa. There's challenges for that. But I had to redefine. So what do you like? And, what is it that you don't like as well? And then what is it that you taught at home? You shouldn't go to taverns. You shouldn't go to... And if you try to sneak out and go, you have your grandmother coming to drag you out with your ear in front of all your friends, embarrassing me. I've never been there, because I guess I've always had this very boring, shy character anyway. So I was like a late boomer. I did everything late. I was just always having my nose in a book. And so I grew up that boring. I guess it was also just my nature, but maybe it helped me or did not help me, I don't know, but it was me. I was never like an out there type of a person, but I had friends who were out there, so I knew I wasn't out there, but I knew what the happenings were, right? Always in touch and alert, but hardly participating. So I think I like that group because they are alert, energetic, they engage, they debate, they fight you, they speak back, and I love that, because I think that's where you have an opportunity to hear them out and help them. Not change them, not direct them, just walk with them, because people walked with me to help me. I was deciding by myself. I was discovering by myself, but they were there to guide, to hear me out. And I think that's where the passion comes from, to help young people find themselves. So I do this in many ways. I do it in the church. I do it outside.
Talk to us about that in the church.
Oh, the public campus ministry.
Yes.
An interesting part of my life, because I am a mentor for public campus ministry, working with the General Conference.
So this is like at the highest level. So when we talk, it is. Come on. We're not going to shy about this one. There's no other higher level. Otherwise, from GC, you're going to heaven.
I suppose, I mean, it's been an immense...
So this is like the highest level of the church in terms of its mission and management and administration. So how did you get involved there? And what is your contribution?
I think it was a blessing. I did not plan it. I did not anticipate it. I mean, I was invited to speak. So first of all, because of the work I do as a mentor with young people over and above my career outside the church, I suppose a few eyes saw and had been following. So Pastor Bosi invited me to a youth convention in Bloemfontein, a massive gathering of young people there to give a talk. And I was actually talking about social media and how it shouldn't define you as a young person. Of course, speaking from experience, because, it's always good to talk about what you know. And well, I suppose there were some guests from the States who were present, and they were, I suppose, quite fascinated with what I shared. And that's really just what it took. I then got an invite.
Your gift made room for you.
I think it really did, because I literally just got an invite to, fly to the GC, I think for about 2 years. And the other one was also just a gift where I got like the biggest gig of my life to go give a talk at the public affairs something conference in Florida in the US to talk about social justice and models of coexistence as Christians among other religious
Faiths
bodies.
And,
all of these I did not plan. I had no clue that I had something to tell world leaders at a POW conference. I had no clue. I had to do that, but I had to be present for the basic core of being able to share a presentation in Bloemfontein, which then has led me over, I think, 5 years now, having the privilege of working with young people in the church across different countries, Chile, Peru, the US, Panama, the UK, and also just across the continent, because we have young people from Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, DRC. And it's, I suppose, perhaps my most defining work as a giver, as a contributor to not just the Church of God, but to young people of different cultures across the globe. And I'm forever grateful for that time to be able to give in that opportunity to, first of all, serve as an ambassador, at the highest body of our church, but also to sustainably contribute as a mentor to the young people of the church. And that has assisted me outside the church, because it's been an interesting profile that has helped me do similar work outside the church. So it's been quite a blessing, I must say.
It's a blessing, but it comes with a burden.
And lots of work, actually.
So, I know. No blessing comes without the burden. It comes with the burden of you having to make sure that you have to sacrifice. So talk to us about some of your highlights, the exciting things that you have managed to do with the young people. One of them I know, this you can't hide, I know it, the Millennial
Dialogue
Millennial
on Africa,
Dialogues, yes. We were able to cover one of them. What I saw there was a young, let me use this quote, Oprah Winfrey in the making. What has happened? I know that was a powerful program. Are you still having it?
The concept of the program still stands. The mandate of the movement is still there. We had COVID, so we couldn't really do physical events, but we've had some online engagements. But it was never about a meetup in terms of events. It was more about getting young people to help teach them and capacitate them on advocacy work across the continent, putting them in a space where they're able to challenge issues of our continent, and not just challenge them with protests. I'm a journalist, and I've had that idea of of marching. I've been there. I always tell young people, that doesn't fascinate me. I'm actually quite old right now. I've done enough marching for Fees Must Fall. It's enough. So what I need to be doing now is trying to influence policies so that we can actually have change. And that's where I'm at now. And I understand the nature of protests and the radicalness of activism on the streets. I've done it. I'm a typical journalist. But the capacitation I'm interested in now as a leader and mentor is to get into rooms where decisions are made so we can actually have the change at grassroots level for the activists, but also for communities in which these activists represent. And that's what Millennial Dialogue on Africa seeks to do, really. There's a number of NGOs that do that. I've worked in the NGO myself, in the NGO space myself with Oxfam. And I think that's where the passion came from, where you realize that the issues we face in Africa are not going to be solved by any politician. Absolutely not. I mean, people who think that way, we need to really help them urgently.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. They're not going to be solved also by religious leaders or any businessman, because it's also not fair on them. It's their money. They cannot be solving everybody's problem. I think that our problems lies in the hearts and minds of every single person. If you're a citizen, and if you're a community builder, if you believe in families and sustainable communities, then you have a role to play. And that role doesn't need you to have any famous, profile of popularity
and
or anything.
It's not even about an office you hold.
No, it's not. I have never been a fan of that ideology in the first place. And I think this is specifically why I've never been a fan of popularism in the first place, because popularity sometimes blurs the lines of responsibility and service.
And accountability.
We get hyped up by this following and followers and likes and this entire euphoria of these strangers having to say something when they actually not saying something. That is a social media talk. And we cannot fight it. It's a business. Let it do what it has to do. Some of us are interested in the actual work that actually brings real impact. And that kind of work always happens behind the camera, because first of all, it's not even fancy, it's clumsy, it's tiring, it's exhausting, it's a whole lot of other things. And
it's not a famous place to be, and it's not something you could say it's tiring.
It's sometimes you don't even want to do it, because you ask yourself, why aren't there other people? Why must this land on my desk? I mean, surely I also want to relax. And these are types of questions that sometimes community builders ask themselves. I don't need this. But you don't need it, but it's a role you need to play. You need to do it. And this is why it's always a matter of a call to service, because it's not about you.
So for Millennial Dialogues, can we expect some in the future? Because I would like to participate, and I'm sure some of our viewers would like to watch and get to learn about them.
They are
Anything
certainly
planned?
We have. I mean, even when we launched, we had a 5 to 6 year strategy plan. Despite COVID was not just a disruption, but also a learning. So we've been grateful too to see what other ways we can position our work and our mandate and our objectives. And we will certainly come out much stronger.
Fantastic.
With a much better view of how we can impact our communities across the continent. Certainly, yes.
Fantastic. Now, talk to me about the burdens, the challenge of the work that you do.
The burdens, I guess, is that you sometimes don't sleep enough, which is a bad thing, because sleep is important. And what I always laugh when I see people, people just post a picture and there's this glamorous view of how lovely life is. And people forget that sometimes you need to even wake up for a different time zone for a call with a mentee in a different country.
Wow.
This is the responsibility behind the fancy label of a mentor. You actually need to do the work. So we called certain things community builder, mentor lead, but behind all of that, it's the work that must happen. It's not just titles that sit there. You've got to do the
you've
work,
got to earn it by
and
work.
be competent in the work too.
Wow.
Because if you're not competent, then you need to shift and somebody else must do it. And these are things that come with a certain level of sacrifice. When you have your own family, your own priorities, your own things to do, you have to learn to balance, but also understand that you've been called to serve in this capacity, and that it matters that you show up in that capacity, but also be able to fit in your life, because you are a normal human being, you are balanced, and it's never easy, and you never get it right. So I always call it the constant balancing act. You're just constantly navigating, but you need that affirmation from your family to say you're doing well, or maybe you should miss this one, try the next one, so you can just breathe for this one. That's also what people need to learn. Not everything should be a yes. You really don't need to be everywhere.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't know how people do it being everywhere. I could never do that.
Wow.
You need to learn to just be where you believe you should be.
Yes.
It's enough, because remember, it's
Set
about
your
impact.
priorities.
It's not about saturation of presence, so it's about the impact. So if you are where you need to be, that is enough, because then the impact will be there for what is required. And I think that's been an interesting thing for me to learn, to balance the yeses and the nos, in terms of church stuff, as people call it, and my stuff and work stuff. So it's like a nice, always a very interesting, nice balancing act you always have to manage. But one of the challenges have been to have my own struggles that were very deep and intense as I was growing into a woman now. Not just a young girl, but a much more mature young woman, where people are starting to even call me Sis Job, and I'm like, really? When did I get here? Job is still fine, really, but you know,
this title that's now coming
really
in.
There? I'm like, it's so there, it's not funny. Sis Job, and I'm like, whoa, okay. So I'm that old, right?
Yes.
And when you realize that you now have to learn to accommodate them and what the need of help that they bring from you, that they need certain things from you in terms of help emotionally, spiritually, or whatever. But it doesn't mean you're perfect. This Sis Jabu also is a human being. She's just an ordinary black woman who's a wife, who's a mom, who's an aunt, who's all these things, a daughter and a cousin, and many other things, and struggling with also just keeping stable and sane to adult through this life with all these other seats I have to occupy. And that has been interesting because God always guides me through that, because I've always believed that my life is truly what God has put forth. So I always say, I don't know what to do here. You, the one who said this career was fit for my character. So I could help, you know, some answers could really help right now. We have those type of difficult conversations with God sometimes. And also the ones that are more like, I actually don't care about it. Feel free to take it away because I'm not bothered. Because that's how honest I am with God. Because I believe that He is my God. And that everything I am is because He made it that way. So if there's a challenge, He needs to give me a hint on what needs to happen. So I always have this expectation of Him to say, what do I do? What do I do? Because remember, there are people who look up to me. I really wish they could look up to somebody else. But for some reason, they just... So give me something so I can feed back, right? So it's always that balancing act of trying to live me and also live life authentically, but also still be the server, the giver.
So God finally balanced the other side of Sis Job. You're happily married now.
Finally, I guess it's a balance, you can call it, but and also a support system. It's interesting because how God does these things is, for some reason, he probably waited for me to do all the things I wanted to do and establish myself as a professional, as a leader, and financially and just independently, and all these things that black women like to make a noise about that are not much of a big deal, really, because what matters most in life is companionship, I think. I've come to realize you can have much, really, but sometimes what's needed is just companionship, so you can journey with somebody. That could be more better than many other things.
How is that been for a young professional African woman with a career? How has that marriage been like in your life? What value has it added?
It has added a lot of value. Thank God for that. Because, it has added a lot of joy too as well, which I'm very grateful for.
Maybe that's where the light skin is coming from.
I think so, actually. Like this. How is my complexion changing with this adulting thing? But it's been good because I've always believed long before I got married that your partner, honestly, without a doubt, and jokes aside, they need to understand what you've been called to do. Because if they do not understand that, I don't care how much their love is or how deep their love is. If you first need to explain your purpose to the person you are waking up next to, there's a very big problem, because the person you're waking up next to is your first audience, your first person to affirm you. And if they have no clue what you've been called to do in the body of Christ or in the professional space, you really are in trouble, because you first of all need to explain it to them, which wastes time and distorts your focus on the actual purpose of work that has to happen. So if you can have a partner that gets it, in fact, in my view, I think they need to get it better than you, because they need to do part of their work. Some don't know this, but I always tell my husband, maybe you didn't know, but you actually you actually have this job that you have now, because you've got to keep pushing this person who is a sister to so many people and a mentor, and you need to affirm this person and sometimes bring sense to them when there's doubt. There's a lot of work that they need to do. And if they're not aware of what is it that you have been called to do, they can't even do that work. So you are stuck, because either you need to motivate yourself, and if you can't, you will sink. So I've always said that a life partner is a make or break. It's not something you can take for granted. They either make you into greatness as they contribute and help you fulfill your greater purpose as God would have it, or they just destabilize this whole thing into pieces. Literally, it's that's how both extremes are. It's never a joke or a small thing. It's a life or death thing, and I guess I'm just blessed. Yeah.
Fantastic, and kudos to my brother right there. Good job. And I like the concept of mentioned them being the first audience. I can affirm you. I've been married now for almost over 20 something years. MelVee Broadcasting Network would have never happened if she did not believe in what I'm trying to explain. And she becomes the ambassador for it. So you're quite right. Get someone who really believes in your vision and can support you. So I want us to bring this to a close, and I've got some surprises for you here. That's what life is all about. It's always full of surprises. And I've got a few questions. I want you to answer them honestly, open-endedly. And these are questions I'm hoping that someone out there might be quite fascinated by. So, what's your best dish or food?
Pap and fried eggs with achar.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the traditional stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Wow. Any day, any time, any season.
Wow. In all the lives that you've lived, or the life you will live, what is the worst nightmare you've gone through or you fear to come through?
Losing a parent. Yeah, I think that truly changed the game for me. Yeah, I never even thought of it. So even when it happened, it was really the worst nightmare, because I had never imagined myself growing up with one parent. So yeah.
How old were you at that stage?
I mean, I was fairly very old. That was just 7 years ago, you know? And it's as vivid as if it happened yesterday. And that's how defining losing a parent is, because you may have the full body. Yeah. The 2 feet are there, you are walking, but you're missing one hand. So everything's there. You can speak, you can see, wake up, function, but you are missing one hand. And that's how losing a parent is. I have one, but I'm still missing one. So yeah, it's a life-altering.
How did it alter your life?
Sure. I mean, it happened before I could even get married. So first of all, it took away that dream of him walking me down the aisle. And I'd always knew it would be perfect because he'd be there. Wow. Never have I imagined that he wouldn't be there. But it has also altered how I now see life, that we don't have the time we think we do with anybody. Wow. This is not what COVID brought to me. I hear a lot of people talk about COVID told us.
No, we have to know.
My dad's death did that. You never have time, ever. Don't ever think you have time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you were to write a book, what would be its title?
Now, that's a very interesting question.
Or what would be the subject? Maybe to break it a bit broader. You haven't published one already, have you?
I haven't, because I feel, great.
So if you were to write your first book, what will it be on?
Probably the kind of work I've done all my years, which is work around social justice, mentorship, leadership, community building, because that's what has defined me. I wouldn't call it a memoir, though, because I've always felt like I don't have much to say. Maybe when I'm 50, I can talk about
when you're in the
an advice here or there. But for now, I'm just a traveler like anybody else. So the least I can share is expertise of a professional skill, not a life story that can help others redefine themselves. I'm not there yet. Yeah.
Your greatest aspiration?
My greatest aspiration is to be witness to a lot of young African people just doing great things and being alive to see it. Because that's my passion. I know how capable young people are, and I know the kind of push they need, and it's always a yearning in me to always be there when it happens, when they change the game, when they just move and shift things and redefine the future for all of us. Yeah.
We all have regrets in life. So what is your greatest regret?
Sure. My regret has, I have a concept of saying failures are learnings or whatever. Regrets, I regret That's actually a difficult one.
Job said, I regret the day I was born.
I certainly don't, but yeah, at least for now. I mean,
Yeah.
But I guess maybe not, I don't know if I should even say regret, but maybe not being able to be...
Or I could say something you wish you had done differently. If
Yeah.
you'd given a second chance, I would change that.
Yes. Yeah, so I would have certainly done a few things differently, like changing a few things of my service to a much earlier years.
You started late.
I feel like I did, because as much as I've always been clear about who I am, I feel like actually had I just started this, that I was sitting on doubt, this thing with doubt.
Yeah.
Had I just beat this doubt, I would have started this important work earlier. Then there would have been impact by now, so that people can... Anyway, I should have done it earlier. I guess I could have.
Yes. Yeah. So don't wait on it. And actually, on this interview, you said, I'm not going to wait on it. Let's just do this thing. And that's exactly this. So I can see you've learned quite a lot from doubting. The last one I have is your greatest joy.
Yeah.
Your greatest joy.
Yeah. That one is very easy, because I'm passionate about stories. Because it's not just stories. Stories are life.
Yes.
Stories are the past, the present, and the future. Stories are very important. And my joy comes from seeing people who actually who finally document their thoughts and be brave enough to tell the whole world that you may not like it or you may like it, but whatever it is, I have put it out there in a book.
Wow.
Because I do believe that as Black communities, as Christians with a mission, we need to start documenting our experiences, our learnings, our teachings, because that's what a legacy is about. We will not be here forever, and what will be there is literature, just like how we found literature when we were born. So I think for me, literature brings me joy, because that is how we are enabling communities, enabling healing, enabling solutions to our socioeconomic problems, because we are writing. We're not just reading, but we are writing, we are documenting, and we are publishing. That for me is so significant, and it gives me joy.
Fantastic. Do you review books?
Literally, that's my life. It's like my that's my job.
I think you're hired. I'll give you my script for the book I've written, so you'll be my reviewer. How is that?
Yeah, no, that's anytime.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And this has been a wonderful discussion with Uchabu. And what a brilliant, brilliant life story. You too, wherever you are, can change lives. And I hope you've learned a few things from Uchabu. Please do like, do subscribe, and do follow this channel. And we hope to see you on the next episode. This is MelVee Podcast on the Go with your host, Melusi Ndhlalambi. God bless you. See you next time.